¿Qué tal, mis queridos amigos de The Wine Club? Hoy tenemos una súper invitada de lujo. Va a estar con nosotros Gaia, de la casa Angelo Gaia, y viene a hablarnos de uno de mis temas favoritos, que es Barbaresco, o bien conocido como la Dama del Piamonte, Lady of Piamonte. Y bueno, vamos a hablar de sus climas, de sus suelos, de sus uvas, pero también, sobre todo, de toda esta tradición vitivinícola que tiene la familia Gaia. Y bueno, seguramente va a ser un día lleno de mucho aprendizaje, así es que vamos a esperar a nuestra querida Gaia. Y mientras tanto, bueno, pues vamos a escuchar un poco de música en lo que van llegando los participantes.
Just a niche of wine lovers. And I think that right now we are living a very happy moment because the lovers of Nebbiolo are becoming more and more and more, and these varieties start to be appreciated in much more parts of the world. How come? I think that Nebbiolo, it's a variety that is not an immediate variety. How can I describe Nebbiolo? When you come, I want to make this analogy. When you come to Langhe, the Langhe area is made by hills. It's all very hilly and very steep. And all these hills, they are made of clay. So the soil that we have is very compact clay. So it's a soil that is very hard to cultivate. Today, there are tractors, there are machines, it's much easier. But for hundreds and hundreds of years, this soil was all worked manually, and most of all was worked by women and kids, because men, they were trying to find another job. During the year, they were going in France, they were trying to get another job, and then they were coming back only for harvest time. So it's interesting because this hard soil shaped the personality of the people from Langhe. The people from Langhe, from this area, they are known for being people that are very serious, very respectful of hard work, are people that are very suspicious. If something comes too easy, there's something wrong. This kind of character, it's a character that for me is shaped by the soil. And so the soil is shaping the personality of the people and is shaping the personality of the wines. So the wine produced in my region has a little bit the same personality. Are wines that are not welcoming you with a warm hug, joyful, friendly, not immediately. They are a bit severe. They open little by little, and I think is a consequence of this soil. It's an area, if you come, you stand on a hill and you look around you, and basically your view is blocked, because on the right you have a hill, in front of you have another hill. So every place is cocooned by hills, and these hills, they block the sounds. It's super quiet. Is blocking the winds, so you don't even feel the sound of the wind, and that's why, because there is no wind, you have this very compact, humid soil, that release humidity. Winds doesn't blow, and so you have this fog that covers everything. And so Nebbiolo is a bit like that. It's foggy meaning that it's not revealing itself immediately. There is a lot behind the fog. Comes out little by little.
Maybe we can say if the Nebbiolo was a person, could be a shy guy, but in the middle of the time, it's getting closer, no? It's a closer guy, I mean.
Yes, he's not the showman that gets on a stage and catch everyone. Yeah,
I get it.
A little bit more shy, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, I always try to do this comparison between persons and grapes, and I love that. So tell me, I mean, many people always asking me about which are the main differences between the two big denominations, Barbaresco and Barolo, and you produce both. So what's your opinion?
Allora, when you are in Barbaresco, the soil in Barbaresco, allora, all the Langhe has the same origin. Was the bottom of a sea that existed here millions of years ago. So the origin of the soil is not that different from one place to the other. For example, when you go to Montalcino, because we have a winery in Montalcino, when you go in Montalcino, there is much more irregularity. You have a soil full of pebbles, then you walk, there is one that is more sandy, then you walk, there is another type of rock. No, when you come in my region, Barolo and Barbaresco, everywhere is, you don't find rocks, you find limestone and clay. The soil is white and very compact. What makes the difference is that in Barbaresco, the soil is geologically very old. Basically, the hills of Barbaresco emerged earlier with respect to the hills of Barolo. So in Barbaresco, the soil is older. So because it's older, got more erosion. So the hills are lower in altitude, and you also find in the soil more sands, more fine sand. So the soil is softer. When you go to Barolo, geologically, the same soil, but is younger. And so the soil of Barolo continue to be extremely compact, less oxidized, less smashed by the atmosphere, so more compact, and the hills still are higher, so they are higher in altitude. So the softer soil of Barbaresco is giving you a Nebbiolo that is relatively softer. The soil of Barolo is more compact and gives you wine that is relatively tighter in tannins. As you have this difference with tannins, you can say the same with the perfume. The perfume that you have from a Barbaresco that has a softer soil is a perfume that tends to be more opened and to be more intense, while the perfume of Barolo tends to be more close to earth, more tight, and needs basically more time to develop. I also find, I mean, sometimes can be difficult to recognize a Barolo from a Barbaresco, because then you have different styles. For example, if you have a Barbaresco that is produced from very low yields in a warm vintage, from a producer that tends to make strong extractions, maybe it can look like a Barolo because you get more extraction, more tannins, more compact, more big. Maybe you have a producer from Barolo that tends to have higher yields and less extraction, and the wine is lighter and sometimes can resemble a Barbaresco. But for me, what helps me in a blind tasting to recognize a Barbaresco from the Barolo are the perfumes. So for me, Barbaresco is always very ethereal. So in Barbaresco, I find always more sweet perfumes. It's more floral. You have more violet, you have rose. By the way, what I'm mentioning are perfumes typical of Nebbiolo. So you can find it also in Barolo. But when it's in Barbaresco, everything is more ethereal, more floral. The spices are sweet. I find fennel seeds, cumin, and also a lot of raspberries, strawberry, very acidic red food. When you drink a Barolo, you have all that, in my opinion, less expressed, and you have a component that is wet soil. Tar is in Barolo. You always have more earthiness respect to Barbaresco. That's why I say that Barbaresco is the ethereal expression and Barolo is the earthier expression. They can age beautifully, both for a very long time, because for me, ageability depends a lot from the quality, from the producer. And when they age, Barbaresco continue to be on the sweeter side, and so evolves in sweeter and sweeter spices, while the Barolo gets earthier and earthier and earthier.
Yeah, I got it. That's why they call it the Lady of Barbaresco, right? And the name of this.
And so there is this analogy. They always say Barbaresco is the more feminine, because usually it's a little bit lighter in body, softer in tannins, and more perfumed. And the Barolo is more tight in tannins, more big. There can be a 0.5 degree, in alcohol difference can be more. Barolo is more. So I like to say, people say Barbaresco is the lady, Barolo is the man. But I also like to say that it's true that Barolo is the man, but it's not really the toughest and biggest and Yeah,
It
most
depends what kind of lady, you know?
Yeah, and Barbaresco is the lady. I mean, Barolo is a man, but he's a gentleman, and Barbaresco, the tough lady.
Yeah, I got it. Yeah, yeah, it's true. Talking about the terroir, because what's your opinion about the crew from Barbaresco? Did you manage different kind of crews?
The crews are very different one from the other because there are some components that make them different. So also in Barbaresco, you can have lighter or heavier soil. You can have different exposures. So for example, so let's make an example. If you have a harder soil, more compact, for example, our single vineyards Costa Russis or Itildin, the area of Treis-o-Pailloré, the lower part of Treis-o-Pailloré, Rabaya, you start to have a soil that is more compact. So it's a soil that gets longer to warm up. So in that soil, in those type of soils, for example, the vineyards, they wake up later from winter. They need more time. They need the soil to warm up to wake up. So the flowering is later. But then respect to a lighter soil, for example, the area of Montefico, Monte Stefano, the area where Sori San Lorenzo is, it's a little bit more sandy, and so it's a soil that warms up faster. But then you have to add to this component the exposure, because, for example, if you have a soil that is sandier, so it's a soil that warms up faster, but is facing east, it's a very good balance, because east facing is colder, but the soil is sandier, so warms up, and so the speed is balanced. Exposure plays an important part. The warmest exposure, obviously, is the west exposure, from where the sun sets, and so it's the area that gets more sun during all the day. And then there is south, and then there is east, and then there is north. Actually, you are not allowed to make Barolo and Barbaresco from north slopes. By law, can only be the other exposure. And then you have the altitude that plays also an important part. Because if you are on the top of the hill, or in the middle, or if your hill is higher or lower, again, you have a different speed of the plant to develop. When you are high, during the winter, you have warm air. And then during the summer, you have cool air. If you are in the middle or at the end, you have more chances of getting frost. The air is colder during the winter, and then you have more warm air blowing during the summer. So that is another component. So every crew is different depending from the exposure. The steepness also, because when it's very steep, you have a different exposure. So exposure, steepness, altitude, composition of the soil, harder or lighter, and then also how closer or more far away you are from the river, because we have a river which is called the Tanaro that is really much influencing the area. Tanaro gives a lot of humidity, and Nebbiolo loves humidity. Nebbiolo needs humidity also in the summer, where maybe doesn't rain and can be warm. Nebbiolo needs to receive humidity from the atmosphere, and the area is humid, because Nebbiolo doesn't like to suffer. I don't know enough about Pinot Noir, so I may say something wrong, but from my understanding, the best Pinot Noir are made from plants that struggle, that you have a very high density of plants per hectare, so that they really have to go deep with the roots, very tiny production. Nebbiolo doesn't like to suffer, and Nebbiolo, it's a very productive variety. It's not very productive, it's a very vigorous variety, tends to make a lot of leaves, and you need to make this variety express itself. You can't constricted too much. So that's why when you come in my area, the canopy is very high. It's not when you go to Burgundy, the canopy is way lower. No, Nebbiolo needs to express itself. Also, the bunches are pretty big. I mean, today there are many clonal selection, and especially the clonal selection that was made in the 80s went in direction of Nebbiolo that makes tiny bunches, that makes more concentration, that achieve more alcohol. But in reality, if you look at muscle selections, generally you have quite long, big bunches. So it's very interesting, it's very delicate. You have to pay attention with the pruning, with the green harvest, with the vigor in the soil. These are the three things you can play with. You have to control the quantity that you produce, but at the same time, the variety has to express itself because its character is of being vigorous.
Yeah, last time when I was with you, you were trying to explain me the kind of pruning that you have in some of your plants that you don't cut in the, you know,
Allora, the pruning, the classic pruning that is made in Piamonte is the Guyot. On Nebbiolo, there is Guyot pruning, differently from Toscana, where on Sangiovese, but also on Cabernet, Cabernet Franc, Merlot, the super Toscan wines, is the cordon pruning. For Nebbiolo, it's Guyot. So you have the trunk of your plant. From the trunk grows a gem, a sprout that goes up. You twist it, and that becomes the branch that makes fruit. In 2004, we modified all our pruning system. It took actually 10 years to achieve the final result on every vineyard, but we started in 2004. So little by little, we have been able of moving the gem of the plant on the head. So basically our plants today, they look like they have a trunk, and then on the top, they have a round head, and we only clean that head. And so from year to year, we clean the head. So what's going to happen to our vineyards? That the vine that usually tends to climb and to grow higher, and that with the Guyot, always you are obliged time to time to do cuts to rebring it back. With our new pruning, this won't happen anymore. We just have the head of the vine, which will become bigger, but won't move from there. The reason why we did this is that in this way, we can avoid bigger cuts, the cuts that are done to bring back the vineyards, the vine to closer to the soil. And so this is very important with climate change. The number of wood disease became more concerning. So this kind of pruning hopefully allows us to have is more respectful. You make smaller cuts. Hopefully you have vines that don't get sick, that they live longer. Yeah, with all the good consequences.
Can we say that you just leave the plants be? Yeah, you don't cut, you just make a direction and just to feel the energy of the plant, right?
It's a way to respect it more and to be less impactful, because the most impactful thing that you do on a vine is when you do the pruning, when you cut a part of it. So this kind of pruning is more respectful and delicate. And then also, And we are actually pruning. We are actually pruning right now, and pruning is something that I find symbolically very nice. You have to consider that right now you do the pruning in January, February, March. So outside is very cold. The hills are covered with snow, and so I like this symbology of man walking in mud and in the cold air, and in a moment where it's so difficult, it's hard, the atmosphere is difficult, the climate is not helping, so it's a moment of darkness and difficulties. And in that moment, you go with your scissors, you cut the dead branches of a plant, so you basically give a cut what is dead, with the branches that are representing the past. And with that cut, you are, with a lot of confidence and hope, opening the door to a new life, to a new vineyard, a new vintage.
Yeah, that's amazing. The nature is always amazing. So, tell us a little, what's your opinion about traditionalists versus modernists? Especially you, because you are in the middle of both.
Marcos, this is a very complex question. I think that every region around the world had moments of tradition and modernity, and then tradition that comes back. You know, up to the 60s, to the end of the 60s, even mid of the 70s, the concept of modernist and traditionalist didn't exist. You didn't have traditionalist, modernist producers of wine. Wine was wine. There was not an added description, traditionalist or modernist, because the way of working the land was basically the same for everyone. There were the same techniques used by everyone. There was the same way of making wine in every cellar. Then, of course, you had producers that were more clean than others, that they were more ambitious and cared to detail. But there was one only style of making wine. So in a way, what really made the difference was the location, the vineyard, the site. Starting from the end of the 60s and 70s, started a new wave of innovation. For sure, my father has been very strong in pushing for a change. Why? I don't know. In part because it's a characteristic of my father. My father is 81, and is in the last 15 years, by working with him, that I learned more about who is my father. And and now I don't want to change subject, but I'm just going to make a small parenthesis. I think that my father is someone that I personally, is my father. I admire him a lot for two reasons. One, because he has a very, very strong belief. So there is no secret in his vision and in the success that he had in his career. The secret is simply that he believes in it. He always believed strongly in this region, in Nebbiolo, in his family. And so when you really believe strongly in something, it means that you protect it. You don't waste, you protect it from waste of times, you fight for it. If you believe in your soil, you protect your team. The way he always handled his wine is with a great belief. And then at the same time, a characteristic of my father is that he's a man of big doubts. So he believes, but he also doubts a lot, because he has never been a dogmatic. Inside him, he always had a love for an openness, a curiosity for trying different things. So my father says that you have to believe in something, but you also have to keep a little bit of doubt that something that you believe in is fully correct, because otherwise you don't leave any open door to improvement and changes. So when my father in 1961 started to work at the winery, for the first 10 years, my grandfather didn't allow him in the cellar. So my father, for the first 10 years, worked in taking care of the vineyards, in every operation of in the vineyards. And those were the years where he started to revolutionize the vineyard. And so he started to introduce new concepts: higher density of plants per hectare, short pruning, green harvest, all things that were not part of the tradition, and that changed at the end the characteristic of our grapes. So what my father was trying to make was trying to have a more consistent quality year after year. because my grandfather was making some great wines in great vintages, but then in many other vintages, the technology and not the technology, the technique was not allowing you to consistently achieve a higher quality. So, of course, all the work of my father was to reduce the quantity, shorter pruning, green harvest, higher density of plants per hectare. And then when he started to work at the winery, he continued his revolution, and he started to introduce different container for the fermentation. He started to experiment with the stainless steel, simply because stainless steel could allow you a more clean vat for the fermentations. He tried also with thermocontrolled, started to introduce French oak. In our region, oak was Slavonian. He didn't throw away the Slavonian big cask, but he also introduced the French oak and the classic French containers, which were barrique. So his innovation, too often, I think the innovations of my father are banalized, because yes, Angelo Gaia introduced barrique and also introduced international varieties like Cabernet Sauvignon and Chardonnay, Sauvignon Blanc to Piamonte. Yes, it's true, but this was not the innovation. The innovation was in trying to adapt new techniques, new concept to our tradition, without flashing away our tradition, but to make them dialogue together. So those were the 70s, the 80s, a moment when in Piemonte you started to have a big change, because in 1961, the producers of Barolo and Barbaresco in total were around 120. In the 70s and 80s started the change. So many farmers that were selling the grapes to those 120 wineries, many of those farmers, they started to keep the grapes and make their own wine. And so they started to transfer from being just farmers to become producers of wine. Today, I don't even know how many are the producers of Barolo and Barbaresco. I want to say 800. We are around that number. So what in the 80s started the process that then continued and continued. All the farmers, they stopped selling to negotiants. So today, almost all of the producers are estate. So many of these producers that they were just moving from being farmers to becoming winemakers, they also started to embrace new ideas, and they started to embrace new techniques. They also embraced highly the use of barrique, simply because many of them had such a tiny production that they couldn't even fill a barrel, a traditional big cask. So that is the moment in the 80s, 90s, moments of experimentation and strong movement toward a more modern style. The term traditional and modernist also variate his meaning, because suddenly when in the late of the 70s, in the 80s, especially in the 80s, you started to have different style, and the traditional and the modernist, actually the term traditionalist was, this is when you were referring to a wine and you were saying this is a traditional wine, was not the term used in a very positive way. The positive term was, wow, this is a modernist wine. So what was the difference? In the late 70s and 80s, people were saying this is a traditional wine, which means very harsh in tannins, there is no expression of fruit, there are oxidation coming from prolonged aging, there is a smell of old oak. Modern wine meant something positive. Here there is an expression of fruit, the wine is fuller, the tannins are softer, etc. Then I have the feeling that these terms, they swapped meaning by the end of the 90s, let's say in the decade 2000, when also because of the climate change, so in part because of the exasperation of the producers, which with barrique, you know, when you use barrique, you have an added richness of structure and added richness of aromas, of sweetness. when you do extreme green harvest and extreme short pruning, you get a concentration of grapes and alcohol that becomes higher. And then on top of all of that, you start to have warmer and warmer and warmer vintage. Everything became exasperated. Meanwhile, the traditionalists were obliged to do some step forward, because actually in the 80s and 90s, traditionalist producers didn't have the success that modernists had. All the attention was on the modernist producers. So in that phase, also the modernists, they started to apply some changes to their winemaking style. And suddenly, in the year 2000, I have the feeling that the traditional wines became a reminder of the greatness and the heritage of the local wines made properly from fully ripe grapes with clean oak, but not exasperated as some modernist wines. So the term became positive, and modernist became a meaning of international and overwhelming. Today, today is very difficult to understand what is traditionalist, what is modernist, which for me is it tells you how advanced is the quality today, because today the style is proper from everyone and is very balanced, and probably of all Italy, this is the region where people did more step forward in the style of the vinification of the wines.
Yeah, yeah, it's very interesting what you're mentioning, yeah, about this, because it's a lot of controversy around, but it's very clear all the things that you said about the winemaking
but
in both.
You know, Marcos, today for me, today is if someone continue to push on the concept of modernist, traditionalist, it has some interest, because today truly I don't find a style that is traditionalist or modernist from the producers of Piamonte. Today the topic moved away from the cellar and is in the vineyards, and so today the topic is no longer which kind of oak you use. Today the topic is are you sustainable, biologic, biodynamic, etc.
I will say that from now on, I will say just the evolution of the wines in Piedmont. Yeah, because it's all about evolution. We need to move forward, especially nowadays with the warming climate. Actually, some areas like in Bordeaux or in Spain, they are including some other varieties. Do you think that is going to happen? This, I mean, you are going to try with some other varieties?
No, it's not going to happen in Piemonte, because differently from Bordeaux, Bordeaux unfortunately has no escape because it's a flat region. A little bit like Bolgheri is. Bolgheri is a wine region in Tuscany, also it is totally flat. So what is the alternative that Bordeaux has? Try other varieties, which is also what's happening in Bolgheri. So in Bolgheri, there is a little bit of a moving away from Merlot and focusing more on late ripening variety like Cabernet Franc, Cabernet Sauvignon, introduction maybe of some varieties that are coming from the south of Italy, which today, because of climate change, you can even plant a little bit more north, like in Toscana. But for Piemonte, it's different because Piemonte is very hilly. So the area of Langhe, so the area of Langhe, it's a circumscribed region that has 10,000 hectares. Inside this 10,000 hectares of rolling hills, you have the smaller region of Barbaresco and the small region of Barolo, which are equal to 700 hectares, really tiny Barbaresco, and 2,000 hectares Barolo. What is going to happen, and is already happening right now actually, is that people are starting to buy land outside from the borders of Barolo and Barbaresco, because the hills, they keep going higher and higher and higher. So many producers from Barolo and Barbaresco are buying land outside from Barolo and Barbaresco. They can't make Barolo and Barbaresco on the other side of the border of the denomination, but they can start to plant, experiment, and maybe make some wines that can be interesting. I don't think that the borders of the denomination will be changed. but people are moving on other hills that maybe in a few years will become famous, hopefully.
Yeah, we don't know what is going to happen, especially nowadays with this virus. We don't know how it's going to change all the world. So I don't want to take a lot of time from you. We have a few questions just to finish with. First one, there's a trend in Mexico about the Mexican Nebbiolo. Some people said that this is not a Nebbiolo, that it's a Lambrusca de Alexandria. Do you know this grape?
I know. I heard something else, but you're probably. I heard something else, but years ago when I came to Mexico and I tried the wine, someone told me that is Bonarda or that is a cross between Nebbiolo and Bonarda. Now you're telling me that is Lambrusco d'Alessandria. I tasted Nebbiolo, but I didn't taste any pure Nebbiolo yet. So I'm still waiting to try that. What I tasted so far is Nebbiolo blended with other varieties.
Next time that you come to Mexico, I will invite you and I will make a tasting with the big Nebbiolos that we are doing, but the Nebbiolos, the real ones, not the Mexican Nebbiolos, just to see how
uno es de Italia y otro es mexicano, ¿no?
Sí.
And what's your opinion about this, and also to give you an idea what we are producing in Mexico, because it's an amazing things that we are doing also in a different climate, different soils, obviously, but I think it's a nice. They are very nice wines. So, what average age to drink your wines, Barbaresco especially?
Ecco, today the wines they have an aging track, a way of aging that is very different from the past. I believe that the wines of these vintages of the last 10 vintages are completely different from the vintages of the past. And sometimes there is no comparison you can make with. I do two examples. One, you don't have it yet because it's not released yet. This is a sample of Barbaresco 18. So basically today we finalized the blend of Barbaresco 18, and we are going to bottle, and then the wine is going to be released in September. So today we were tasting all the Barbaresco. Consider 2018 vintage medium body. 18 is not going to be one of the most iconic vintages. I really like it, but was.
Sorry. You mute. Okay, please go ahead.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
2018, it's a medium light vintage. 2018, very balanced. The alcohol is 14. In the past, and with past I mean 80s, 70s, 60s, when you had a medium light vintage, the alcohol was 12.5. So today you can have a medium light body Barbaresco, but the alcohol is 14. That's a big difference between the past. Maybe that alcohol is also helping to bring forward and to push a little bit further the evolution, the ageability of the wine. So Barbaresco 2018, for how long is going to age? I don't know. I would say 15, but I may even reconsider this and say 20. Another example, 2017 Barbaresco. 2017 is, we can't compare 17 with any other vintages of the past. 2017 has been the hottest and the driest vintage we ever had. There is no comparison with anything else. How it's going to age. The wine has high acidity. The tannins are firm. The wine is balanced. But I can't tell you, even though we make wine since a long time, I can't be sure today of how they age.
I understand. You know, as a sommelier, I always try to do pairing between food, obviously, and wine, but I always like to do match music with wine. So what's your favorite music, Gaia? Do you have
Allora, I was before you called me, I was listening to Nina Simone.
Oh,
so I was
nice.
relaxing, starting my weekend with this beautiful music. And what else I like? I like Pink Floyd.
Okay.
I like
Let me play this, and you tell me, how do you pair with? I mean, which one of your wines to pair with? I know that you know this guy. You know him?
It's Italian music. What is it?
Yeah, it's Eros.
Ah, it's Eros. Yeah. Eros is, I mean, it's very romantic, naughty. Romantic naughty. So what can be romantic naughty?
You know, nowadays we need special moments like now. So tell me, which of your wines you pick to pair with this Cosa de la Vita from Eros?
I think is a Barolo. It's the first time I do pairing with music. I don't know. I would say
we need to open our minds.
Barolo 2015 makes me, I don't know why, but makes me think of a Barolo 2015, which is a firm structure Barolo, but approachable and fruity at the same time.
Wow. I want to try that. So listen this. You said, Nina? Oh, what a nice voice.
Wow. This is a Barbaresco 89.
89, okay. Why?
It's an 89 because this voice, I don't know, makes you think about beautiful memories of the past. Makes me feel nostalgic somehow. I feel nostalgic.
Yeah, the voice, no? The voice sounds like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So when I drink Barbaresco 89, yeah, it makes me really, I smell it, and it smells like the cellar of the stairs going down to my cellar, smells like the streets in Barbaresco. It's a very deep voice, like an 89.
Yeah, I agree. I really love this girl, and oh, it's amazing. Well, and yeah, it's amazing. I really like to do these kind of things, because sometimes we need to do different situations. Listen, this one, the last one. This is a Mexican one. Café Tacuba is the name of the group, and the name of the song is Ojalá que llueva café.
Ojalá
que llueva café. It's a very, I think for me, it's like a kind of a lot of energy you can feel in this, especially with the violins.
Exactly. Yeah, I was thinking exactly to, sorry, I'm always on Barolo Barbaresco, but this makes me think, I'm talking about more the vintages, makes me think about the Barbaresco 18, this explosion of youth. It's like, when I drink Barbaresco 18, it's like a kid jumping on a chair, full of energy, explosive, and this song match well the image.
You know, I was thinking about the Gaia, the Chardonnay that you made. Oh, yeah. It's lovely. Well, Gaia, I really want to thank you to be with us today. It has been a pleasure. One last thing, you know, I am preparing a special event to honor all the women in the world. I mean, all the women that will be in this event in March 8th. So we call it Women and Wine. And I will invite some people from the industry, obviously, but also from different kind of, athletes, writers, and doctors, and all of them are going to be ladies. Jancis probably is going to be with us, Jancis Robinson, and some others. So, and I will be glad if you can join us. Think about it. Don't answer
Marcos,
me.
was very fun, and you're very good in doing this. It's different and fun. So yes. About the women, I have to tell you one thing.
You already say yes?
Yes. With pleasure. I want to tell you one thing. 3-4 weeks ago, there is a, I don't know if you read that, there is a platform which is called LiveX. is a UK platform, Livex. I don't even know if I am describing it right, but it's a platform where negotiants, they trade the wine. So Livex released, made a Power 100. So basically the 100 wineries that have been more traded, that kept more, I don't know, that grew with prices. They put together different values to describe which are the top more powerful brands. So number one was Leroy from Burgundy. The number two was Le Fleuve from Burgundy. The number three was Gaia. The number four was Sassicaia. And then I don't remember, 5, blah, 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 blah. But I'm very happy about that. But then I thought about it and I made another consideration that I like even more. Leroy, La Lubie Leroy. Le Fleuve, Anne Le Fleuve. Gaia, me, my sister. Okay, also my father, but right now me and my sister. Sassicaia, Priscilla. So, come on. This classification shows that women are on the top. Yes. My sister has a little boy. His name is Romeo. Romeo is 2 years and a half. And Romeo is very proud to be man, to be macho. So you always say macho. Yeah, so you always say macho, more strong than feminine. No, maschio più forte. And so we were discussing, and in front of him, I said to my father, Dad, tell him something. Who is stronger, maschio or feminine? And so my father said to him, well, Romeo, maschio is stronger, but women are really studying hard. They study harder than men, and they really focus, and they're very, very ambitious. So men should be worried. You have to pay attention, because women they can become stronger. So Romeo was very impressed, and he said, okay. I like study. Me too.
Yeah. It's,
this classification was for me was an award to women.
Yeah, sure. Well, I'm going to be honored to have you here in March 8th. And I really thank you to be here with us, sharing your knowledge about your denomination, your wines, your passion, because you are really passionate about the wine industry. I mean, I know many people from all around the world, but when I know someone that is passionate, I feel the same. So thank you, Gaia. And I hope to bring you here to Playa del Carmen in the back so, and to have a nice bottle of.
Grazie.
So,
grazie mille.
We keep in touch, and I see in March. I'm going to try to practice my Italian. Per me è veramente un piacere di fare come si dice, la classe con te oggi, e ci vediamo pronto alla marzo.
Bravo.
E basta così.
Perdona, yo también hablo español, lo hablo un poco a la italiana, pero podemos intentar de hacerlo en español el 8 de marzo. Ciao a tutti. Marco, te perdí.
Bene.
Te veo ma no te escucho. Ciao.
Hola. Perdón, muchas gracias. Ci vediamo dopo.
Grazie.
Gracias a todos por estar aquí.
Que tengas un buen fin de semana.
Tú también. Que Dios te bendiga. Hasta la vista.
Ciao.